Hey guys, I want to share with you today, I'm just going to walk through a trail that oddly enough was so close to my house and I didn't even realize it. It's an open space trail called Leona Canyon, and honestly it's less than 5 miles from my house and I never even knew it. I want to do some bird photography, walk through the trail, see what else pops up. There may be an owl or two, or birds or wildlife, and I'm just going to walk through and share with you guys some simple techniques on how you can take with just a little bit of gear some great photos on one of your trails or parks near you. So let's get going. So a couple things I want to go over real quick that I bring with me that I think you might find useful, you might not have considered before. Even though this is just an open space trail, you're not hiking out in the remote wilderness or something like that. You want to bring a couple pieces of gear with you that are I think important, and I want to share them with you real quick. One of them is a little bulb rocket blaster. It's an air blaster, and what this does, if you haven't seen one before, it just allows you to blow dust off the lens of the camera. These places can get kind of dusty. People ride bikes and stir up dust. Wind blows through, things like that. So this is really helpful in not having to touch the lens and still remove debris from it. If you get dust on there, you don't want to use a lens cloth. You'll scratch it up. So best thing to do is just few little squirts of blasts of air on there, and that'll help get that dust off. Another option is a dust pin, and they're not expensive. You can get them for like $10, and they got a little brush on the end. You can clean your lens off with that after you blow it off. Don't start with this. It's best to start with this and then end with this. Another thing I bring is plenty of memory cards. I keep them all in a little pouch like this. I throw them in my bag. Nothing worse than getting out somewhere and thinking you're going to go take pictures and you left all your memory cards at home, or even the only memory card you had, you thought it was in the camera, but it's still in the memory card slot, the memory card reader on your computer. Can't take pictures like that. Another thing, I'm not a bird expert. I do love to watch the birds. I do love to take photos of the birds. I have a bird book that I use to identify the birds with, and I find it very helpful. After I take a few shots of a bird, I can whip out this book and be like, narrow it down and say, okay, now I can kind of commit to memory what the name of that bird is. I might remember it, I might not. It might take me 5 or 6 times to be able to commit it to memory. But without the book, you can't do that. And this really helps. There's apps and stuff you can use on your phone to identify birds, but sometimes you're in a place where there's no cell phone signal, or like me, sometimes you just don't want to turn the stupid phone on because you're out here to get away from all that. So a book like this is really nice to have and carry with you. Next thing is obviously a few bottles of water, a small bag to carry the stuff in. You don't need big backpacks full of gear. I've got one lens with me today. I've got some binoculars, bought these on Amazon. Just some real basic stuff. A couple granola bars or something. And nowadays, you gotta bring your mask, so I don't want to get hollered at on the trail. But anyway, I've got everything in a small bag. I do have a bigger bag, a backpack, more like for real hiking and things like that you can put lots of different gear in. Today, like I say, I'm only using one lens and a tripod, and I'm just carrying water and some other, spare batteries and stuff in here today. But make it light, make it fun. You don't want to be out here, creating a bunch of work for yourself. Another quick tip is my camera is attached to the tripod because, I anticipate there's not much light out here today, so I anticipate having to use my tripod and some slow shutters to get some pictures. But the main thing when you're carrying your camera on a tripod, if you have a strap on it, keep the strap over your neck while you carry it on the tripod. Keep your lens facing down. If you're not going to keep a lens cap on it, keep the lens facing down so nothing falls on top of it, and keep the lens hood extended. Make sure to use a lens hood. There's a reason it seems like a real insignificant piece of equipment, but camera lenses are designed for light to come straight through. and a lens hood helps do that, and it creates more sharpness, contrast, and color in your images. The lens hood prevents light from coming in from all directions and entering the lens. So if you have your lens hood, extend it, use it, and keep it facing down as you walk the trail. And that's really it. You know, there's lots of wide open space out here. There's plenty of birds. So just going to walk through and kind of, you know, share my day with you today, and hopefully you can pick up some stuff out of this video that you might find useful. Another thing I try to do when I'm walking is, especially this time of year for birds, is I use my binoculars and I'll take a look through the trees and all the little holes that some may be occupied by squirrels, some may be occupied by nesting birds, and so it's nice to be able to scan the area and look in those little holes and little crevices and see if there's any nesting birds, and you can score some really nice pictures that way. Right now I don't see nothing, so there's another thing I like to do is, since birds fly away, when you show up, is, you know, you can look down the trail with the binoculars and see what birds are flying around and where they're active. That way you can kind of gauge how close you might be able to get, instead of, you know, just walking down the trail blindly and then you see some birds active in a bush, you get up on there and then they fly away. You know, this way you can kind of scout ahead and plan a little bit and be like, oh, you know, there's some warblers in that bush over there I can see with the binoculars. Let me try to maybe, you know, zoom in or adjust my position so that I can photograph them without them all flying away by the time I get there and it's too late. So that's another little tip. Just use your binoculars, scan ahead, see what's flying around in the direction you're walking, and try to, you know, set up and compose for that. Now, scouting ahead with my binoculars, I saw on this tree there's some warblers. I want to try to set up. They're pretty active right now. I don't want to lose that. I'd like them to continue to be active and not fly away by the time I get there. So if I can get a good picture, I've only got a 300mm lens on, and it's a really small bird, and it likes to hide in all the little branches. And so, you know, I'm going to set my AF mode to burst to high speed, but I'm also going to select my expanded AF points to 1 square, not expanded, because they're inside bushes where there are trees where there's lots of little branches and leaves, and I don't want my AF point, if it's an expanded point, it may focus on something, you know, in front of it or to the side of the bird, and being that the bird is so small, I don't want to take that chance. I just want to use a single AF point on this, and we're going to use single shot. The other trick here is it's pretty dark under the canopy, you know, inside the tree with all the little sticks and leaves. So I've got it on auto ISO, and I've set my auto ISO range from 200 up to 3200 with a minimum shutter speed of 1/125th of a second, which is really slow for this type of bird, but we'll see what we can get out of it. It's dark. I don't really want to, you know, use ISO 3200, but if I had to, I would. But the main trick here is to, you know, take quite a few shots, and hopefully on this small bird in a dark area, a couple of them will be good. So with any luck, I'll get some cool photos of one of these warblers. So here is the tree, and I'm just going to set up. And even if you get here and the birds do move, you know, these type of trees are these birds' homes, so they're going to be back. Just set up, wait there, you know, be patient, be quiet, and don't make a lot of sudden moves, and generally they're going to come back. You know, and part of this is just being patient, being still. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. So, but let me pan around this tree. You guys can kind of, I've got the GoPro camera mounted on my camera hot shoe, so I don't want to make anybody dizzy, but I want to show you the tree at the same time and kind of the environment that I'm in. It's a little bit dark, and these birds, like I say, are really small. I'm using a 300mm lens, and so with auto ISO turned on, shooting in manual mode at f4, I set a shutter speed that I want, and we're going to shoot at that, and the camera will automatically adjust the ISO to give me the correct exposure. And I can see the warblers flying around on the top of the canopy up here. They'll come down. You just gotta, once you see the bird, you just follow it around with your eye and see where it goes through the bushes, you know, if you can. I mean, they're pretty quick, but once you see one, then you can kind of follow it better and get your eye to the viewfinder at some point when it gets down on your, you know, closer to camera level, and get some photos of it that way. You know, like I say, I've got a 300mm lens. I'm on a tripod to give me a little extra stability because I don't have the advantage of a lot of light under here. So the tripod on a ball head, because I don't have a gimbal, really gives me a little extra advantage in trying to get a sharp picture of these small, fast-moving birds that are in a low-light situation. Auto ISO really helps also, and I set my exposure value to be, you know, about a quarter stop over what the camera says is proper, and that helps out also. Well, I struck out on that bush. Here is a picture I did from the previous day, though, that I want to share with you, of these little warblers. Sometimes you strike out, you know. When you're photographing in these public places like this, there is a lot to contend with that I didn't mention also. People passing by, dogs, children, you know, lots of different distractions that chase the birds away and keep the birds away for some time. I did get a picture of this little warbler the day before, so let me share it with you. You can see just how small this bird is and just how many obstacles and things are in the line of sight between you and the bird. See these little branches and sticks, and you know, that's what I was saying about autofocus points. If you have the ability on your camera to change your autofocus point from an expanded multi-point to a single square, then you would be greatly benefited to do that in shooting this type of bird or photographing this type of bird. It's a really pretty bird. It's a really fast bird. Look how yellow and how it blends in with its little environment right there. Just a really pretty bird. I was hoping I could share with you guys on that bush a score, but you know what? They're birds. They're alive. They have wants and needs, and evidently they didn't line up with mine at that time. So anyway, you know, here's a picture, like I say, from the day before. You just got to be patient. You can have the best thought out, best well-laid plan, and you know, it doesn't work. We're dealing with live creatures, and you know, part of the fun of this is being able to, you know, go out and plan and get the photos. But, you know, also you have to have an expectation that you might not get anything. It just happens like that. And it's not a big deal. It's not that you're a bad photographer or that you didn't prepare. It's just that that's the way it goes. So don't be discouraged, you know, at all when it comes to not getting a photo. Just keep after it, you know, employing the same principles that I'm sharing with you, and you'll get photos. It's not a, you know, question, you know, that you won't get any. You certainly will. But just keep after it, keep patient. That's part of the fun in this type of photography too, is the challenge. You know, being able to move with and adapt to the environment and to the bird, and, you know, to the behavior of the birds and stuff like that. You know, and the obstacles that you don't see in the viewfinder, like kids and dogs and people walking and riding bikes. There's a lot to contend with in a spot like this when you're trying to get birds. But anyway, let's keep going and enjoy this photo in the meantime of a Wilson warbler. So, the sun has come out, which is nice. There's a lot of light shining through the canopy in different spots. I'm going to change my tactic up a little bit, and sometimes it's what you got to do. And I'm going to put an extender on my 300mm f4 lens. The downside to this is, I'll tell you the downside before I tell you the good side. The downside is you lose 2 stops of light. So that's why... Oh, there's a yellow warbler. Oh, so pretty. The downside is you lose 2 stops of light. That's why you gotta wait till it's bright out to use it. The second downside is it takes your f4 lens and it turns it into an f8 lens. So that's kind of a bummer. But where you want separation, you're not gonna get it. But you're gonna get reach. You're gonna get it's just a 2x extender. It's gonna take that lens and make it a 600 millimeter focal length at the expense of light and some sharpness. But on the sharpness note, if you're not trying to drag something in way, 300 feet away with this, and you keep the subject in the center of the lens, which is the sharpest point of the lens for the, for your lens generally, the very center AF point is the most sharp. So there's some trade-offs, but if you understand how to work around it, then you can judge whether or not it's something you want to use. In this case, I'm going to use it. These birds are like this big, and it's bright enough out where I think I can make this work. So let's get going. One other quick note: when you're changing a lens in the field, point your camera down so nothing from the top falls into the camera sensor area or the camera body. Always point it down and do it from underneath. I gotta try. I'm striking out today so far between dogs and people and flies. I'm feeling the struggle. I'm gonna stand back behind some of these bushes and kind of use them as a natural blind and shoot off over there into the distance. I see some. Let me take a look with my binoculars and see what. There's some small birds over there on these branches. I don't know exactly yet what they are. But dang it, they're birds and I'll take it. We'll try to. Come over here a little bit. There's a bird down there taking a bath. Oh my gosh. Awesome. So let me explain to you what these noises are going to be. You're going to hear those are shutter actuations. That's my camera shooting 9 frames a second. And what I'm going to tell you in the video while you're watching after this voiceover part is I'm going to tell you what I'm looking at in the viewfinder. Remember, I'm set to auto ISO, so my camera is going to use a range of ISO 200 up to 3200, which is what I've set it at. And if I want a faster shutter speed to freeze the action, in this case of that bird, then I'll just adjust my shutter speed and my camera will automatically keep up by changing the ISO to a higher ISO, all the way up to the highest end of the pre-selected range that I've set. But look at these 2 pictures of this robin here. I said towhee in the video because I was all excited, but it's a robin. Look, he's giving me the stink eye right there. And then here too, he's down there taking a bath. And, things you want to look for when you're taking photos, you want to try to keep that AF point on the bird's eye. It's tough when the bird is far away. Honestly, here in this case, I was probably about 30 feet away. Fortunately, it's a little bit of a larger bird, not like the warblers, but still, keeping focus locked on that bird's eye is what you want to do. And you want to be mindful if there's some action. You want to be mindful of a shutter speed that's going to freeze that action. But there's a lot to do in that small space and in that small time when the bird shows up and you actually got a photo. And this brings up another point. I was talking about distractions earlier with dogs and bikes and so on. Just as I'm finishing up shooting this bird, a dog comes up and the bird flies away. But go ahead and watch the rest of this video and you'll hear the camera clicking. You'll hear me talking and explaining the process of what I'm thinking while I'm doing this photo. And I didn't get the warblers, but I did score some really cool pictures of this robin. Let's go ahead and watch the rest of the video and I'll explain some other parts of it as we move on. Okay guys, thanks for watching and here we go back to the video. Get my shutter speed fast enough to freeze the action of the water. It's a towhee. That's a nice towhee down there. I'm on auto ISO f8. I want to do 1/500th of a second. Freeze some of that action of the water. There we go. Got that eye flashing around. He's looking up here. You think they don't see it, but they do. There you go. Taking a little bath down there. Yeah, nice. You don't mind at all. Good stuff. Good stuff. Beautiful. That's a towhee full of color right there in the bright sun. There he goes. He flew away. That was a score. Awesome. I'm happy with that. I'm going to look at the images on the back of the camera. All 600 of them. So while it may seem basic, you can look and see a bright side and a side that is not as bright. A high contrasty side that, you know, light is poking through in various spots. Try to shoot where there's light. You're going to have a better time, an easier time, and, you know, it's not going to be as much of a struggle. You're going to have a much more open area to choose from where birds are landing than you would in, for example, the wooded area where there's a lot of shade and, you know, spots that, you know, the birds can hide that are dark, and then they can fly into an area that's really bright. And so if you have something more consistent as far as lighting goes, try to stay in that area, and you'll have, in the beginning, a much funner time. I'm not saying that only shoot over there, but if you're beginning, choose where it's bright. There's a lot less for you to have to worry about in trying to get the image because the light is already there.